Starfield has been known as this large and expansive world for players to explore. With over 1,000 planets and 100 systems in the game, it is hard to think otherwise. But there's a lot that people aren't talking about when it comes to Starfield. We all might hear that there are over 1,000 planets to fully explore and 250,000 lines of dialogue. But has that sunk into what it truly means? And what is up guys, In from the Den here, and today I wanted to go back and take a look at how big Starfield actually is and why it is still growing as we speak. If you're excited, make sure you hit that like button and comment what you want to see from Starfield. But with that being said, we have a lot to go over, so kick back, strap into your seat, and let's blast off into today's video. Now we all know that Starfield will be a massive game just from what we have seen and heard about it. We know that there will be over 1,000 planets and 250,000 lines of dialogue, but what exactly does that mean for the game? Well, let's compare these numbers to Bethesda's other titles like Fallout 4 and Skyrim. Both Skyrim and Fallout 4 had large maps in their own right, with Skyrim having a world size of 15 square miles, while Fallout 4 is about 9 square miles. This does seem large, but when you compare it to Starfield, it seems quite small. The thing is though, with all of these planets to fully explore, things might be a little barren just walking around each of the worlds looking for stuff. I doubt we will see a level of design similar to Skyrim with how large the world space is going to be, but I think this is going to play well with Starfield's strengths. The theme for Starfield as we know right now is exploration. Whether that be exploring a new planet or a city or even a dungeon, exploration is a big draw to the game and there's going to be a lot of it. I know a lot of these planets are going to be for resources or some other gameplay feature, but what if you could find a secret quest on one of the moons for the game and it leads you down a rabbit hole that Bethesda has done so many times? It's going to be moments like these that fully envelop you into the world of Starfield, and I can't wait to see what they have in store on this end. The new scanning system will also be playing a big role in exploration for Starfield. The feature kind of removes the fact that all of the worlds will be procedurally generated to a certain extent. This is still something we don't know much about, but it is possible that each of the many planets have a unique creature, flora, or resource associated with them. This would make each of the worlds beneficial to travel to, and on top of that, the scanning system would be used as a way to identify what you have found on each one. It would fit as some sort of way to keep track of your progress in the game, and to also let the player know what they are missing for other features out there. The scanning system looks to be something that will allow other tools out there like outpost building and spaceship travel to work to the best they possibly can be. I really like the idea of them leaning into a way to track your exploration, and I can't wait to see how far they will take scanning. On top of that, from what we have heard, random encounters will be playing somewhat of a big factor in the whole flow of the game. Back in games like Skyrim, we saw this in abundance and really livened up the world to make it feel like it was still evolving around you. Think of all of the Dark Brotherhood contracts sent on you or Thalmor prison transfers. What if now, instead of little generic missions, we got entire locations that would be as if they were a random encounter? This changes things up a lot because in previous games you would potentially talk to one person and they would send you off on a quest to, let's say, find a piece of equipment, but they would be sending you to a location on the map that we've seen or not procedurally generated to the extent that we will see. In Starfield, it works a little differently as these locations will be entirely different, not just the quests themselves. Think of it like this: you will find an outpost somewhere on a planet and they will ask for you to go find someone on a different part of that planet, or even better, a different planet entirely. An entirely dynamic dungeon will then appear to you on a map marker and you will have to go there to complete your quest. From what it sounds like, this isn't entirely different from what we saw in something like Fallout 4, but this time it is done on a much larger scale. I'm not sure how to feel about this just yet, because to me the Radiant quests from Fallout 4 were on the weaker side of content in the game. Just from an outside looking in perspective, they are going with a more quantity over quality for random encounters in Starfield, but that is still left up for debate. It could also hold a lot of intrigue as well though, because random encounters could mean a lot of different things, not just the fetch quest type of things. This is what can really make a game in space feel alive, and Starfield has a chance to do it on a whole other level. This is only further enhanced by how many lines of dialogue is in the game itself. Like I said earlier, there are over 250,000 lines, which is more than both Fallout 4 and Skyrim combined. What does that mean, you ask? Well, this could mean a lot of different things, all a positive for the game. For starters, this is a good indication that we will see more quests for Starfield. It is one thing for Skyrim to have 60,000 lines of dialogue and Fallout 4 to have 110,000, and then both to have a wide variety of side quests and main ones alike. But when you near double that number, there's a good chance that we'll see a lot more than both those games. Just think about the possibilities we could be seeing. I don't think it is advanced just yet on how much we will actually be seeing because of how they are marketing it, but it is definitely coming. Think about the many great games coming from Bethesda, and most of the time the best moments are the ones where you have the choice on how things play out. This could be taken up to 11, with entire storylines being driven by the choices we make. All of the faction quests, side quests, and miscellaneous quests could be driven by this type of narrative, which will definitely enhance the RPG elements of the game. This goes further than just more quests though, because we need to see consequences of our actions with these factions and a lot of different choices to pick from. With each faction we are able to join, there needs to be diverging storylines that contain a lot of different choices. Then from those decisions the player makes, we would be able to see certain consequences spread from that. Bethesda has stated they are going the more RPG route in Starfield, and there's no better way to show it than a lot of consequences through the actions we take. This will also help a lot with replayability as well. If we see more choices, then there will also be more paths to go down and explore, which will overall make the world of Starfield that much better. So we know that the world spaces are getting massively larger, but its cities are going to be a lot more substantial as well. We know there will be 4 major ones, with New Atlantis being the largest we have seen in any Bethesda game. That's right, think of the Imperial City, and much more than that, then you will get New Atlantis. With there being such a small amount of cities in Starfield, I think we will be seeing them more developed than what we saw in previous ones like Skyrim. One of the biggest criticisms of Skyrim was the lack of memorable cities, and here we could see them get much better. I could only imagine the level of depth we will be seeing, and that gets me very excited for Starfield. On a side note, from what we have seen just from the little gameplay we have gotten, each of these cities have a different feel that separates them from each other. Take New Atlantis for instance. It appears to be this utopian society led by the United Colonies. Then we take a look at something like Aquila City and it has more of that western vibe to it. It will only diversify each one a little more and make something like Neon City feel more refreshing. I'm glad that we will be getting a renewed focus on cities, but to what degree isn't exactly known at the moment. Until we get the game in our hands, we can only speculate, but to me, Bethesda has heard what the fans have been saying about previous titles and are looking to switch it up entirely. The next thing I want to talk about I don't think is getting talked about enough, but the armor in the game looks to be something quite enjoyable. Now, armor has always been a big part of character progression in Bethesda games. The higher level you get, the harder the enemies, which means you will need a higher base defense. This time around, I think there's a chance it will work a little differently in a lot of ways. I do still think we will follow a similar approach with the higher level, higher base defense going on, but with things like crafting and a deeper skill tree, I think there will be more options for build crafting. Say if you wanted to have a Juggernaut build with extreme defense, there will be perks along with different mods you can spec into so you can increase its potency. They can take it even deeper for gameplay options like stealth. Maybe the type of clothing you wear will either help or harm your chances at being found by enemies. You saw this a little in Skyrim, but when you were able to basically be invisible at all times no matter what you were wearing, it's hard to compare to it. These build options go beyond just the armor you wear, but also into the weapons you use as well. I can really see them having armor that increases certain weapon damage across the board and having equipment synergize with each other. There are a lot of different options they could take when it comes to the armor in Starfield. I hope they take a look into the build crafting side of the game because that will make it easier for replayability and just fine-tune the systems with all the RPG elements. Maybe you want your character to be an ex-heavy gunner for the United Colonies or a stealthy assassin for the Ecliptic Mercenaries. Different armor types will let you show this off in-game, but also go a lot deeper with how you can utilize it to the best of its ability. The armor for the game will go a lot deeper than what people might think, and that is what gets me so excited about this particular system. Why is Starfield getting even bigger still though? Well, in my opinion, post-launch content will be playing a massive role in the longevity of the game. We've said this so many times already, but the fact is we will be seeing over 1,000 planets to explore and 250,000 lines of dialogue. This is an insane amount just from an outside looking in, especially from an exploration side. The planets in particular interest me because there is a lot that they could be doing with them after the game is released. Really, I just want to see Starfield as an ever-evolving world, and it makes sense in terms of the game. People will continue to expand out onto different planets further and further out, and with that, more quests will become available as well. Think about it like this: what if the United Colonies sent out settlers to different worlds across the system and began to colonize each one? It will feel a lot like the town of Far Harbor from the respective DLC, with dangers for people everywhere you turn, and the player will have to help around as much as they can. Maybe they could go even further into that Far Harbor vibe with having multiple factions vying for a single planet due to a powerful artifact or resource that is situated there. If they do decide to go down the path that the factions will be separated throughout their questlines during the main game, a good place to continue something like the Colony War would be in DLC content. Personally, I think this is exactly how Shattered Space will play out. I mean, just look at the name, Shattered Space. It gives us just a little to go off on with the DLC. Let's break this down. The name Shattered Space could mean a number of different things, but in my opinion, it means that the factions will be fighting against one another for control of a potential new resource or system. I can really see them having the Freestar Collective and United Colonies fighting over a planet or an entire system, and the player has to choose between the two. Both of them will have forward camps on planets and space stations to make it really feel like the two are at odds with one another. This can be something that will really hammer home the choices and consequences you make during Starfield. They could go down the road of expanding on existing planets, which will flesh out many of the desolate planets out there, or if they decide to add more systems to the game, it could be something entirely new. We're gonna go deeper into this a little later on, but personally I would like them to use the space they already have and make it that much better, but I can see the appeal of adding an entire new system that looks wildly different from the rest of the game. I can really see Bethesda doing something like this to continue the story they have set up for the game and just add on to the depth of the many worlds. It would definitely be interesting to see what a war in space will look like in Starfield, so I hope we get this at some point for the game. Now, another possibility for Shattered Space is something that ties heavily into the main story. When we take a look at the artifacts and what characters in the game have been saying about them, we start to learn that humans were not the ones who created them, and that leaves the door wide open for aliens to come into the game. I'm gonna say now though that I have no idea how it will play out, and this is highly speculative, but what if this artifact is some sort of a beacon, and when we combine all the pieces together, a signal is sent out? From this, we come into contact with an intelligent alien race. I like the idea of them continuing what was given during the main quest, with them fleshing out what will happen afterwards when aliens begin to inhabit the settled systems. What I wouldn't want is for it to feel like cut content, but something that is a continuation of what was already established. Aliens are, at least in my opinion, likely the next step when it comes to Starfield, but it depends on which route they will go down. We could see a number of things play out, like them being hostile or friendly, and each of these comes with their very own different story points. I imagine that if we were to see them, they might take over one of the planets in the game and potentially morph it. This could change how we view different worlds in the game, with them getting somewhat of an upgrade. This all kind of blends well with the idea of Shattered Space as well, because I'm assuming some of the more powerful factions of the game will investigate what is going on with the new alien species. From there, we could see a number of different storylines play out, all of which has me excited. Continuing on though, I want to go a little deeper into the idea that they will be adding an entire new solar system or planet for the DLCs. If we were to see a new planet or system added to the game, I wouldn't want it like any of the others we will see already. I'm just assuming here that once Bethesda will start rolling out DLC, players will be massively overleveled with the best type of gear. In my opinion, a good way to offset this would be to add a sort of endgame area where there are harder enemies, better loot, and possibly even different mechanics. I mean, we got this a little bit with Far Harbor and Nuka World, with Far Harbor having the irradiated fog throughout the island that would make it even more important to wear armor with rad resistance. We also got to see a lot harder enemies in my opinion as well, with gulpers, anglers, and fog crawlers. What if we were to continue this into Starfield? It would only make sense Bethesda could add a new solar system that is completely unexplored that nobody even knew about until it was discovered by the player. They could even add it where multiple factions will descend onto the new planet or system to claim it as their own, or they could go down the route of adding an entirely new faction for the DLC. What is important though is that it will serve as Starfield's endgame location with harder enemies and better loot to find. To make it really different, they could even add their own mechanic to the DLC that sets it apart from the rest of the game. Maybe there are gravity wells scattered throughout the planet that the closer you travel to them, the slower you get, lower you can jump, and potentially slowing down the velocity of your guns. This is only one way they could change it up, because we could be seeing a number of different gameplay variations, like very different day and night cycles, and depending on what time it is, the harder the creatures of that world will become. Say if it was nighttime, the enemies will become more durable and hit harder, and maybe even have different variations to the creatures of that world. I don't know though, these are just a couple of ideas, but any way to make it a little different and more difficult from the base game is the goal here, and I can really see them going down this route in the future. I imagine that if we were to see new planets, they would have to be different from what we were already exploring, so I expect to see even more after Starfield is released. This goes beyond just shattered space, because I imagine there will be a couple of large story expansions, so hey, who knows, maybe it is possible for us to get a new solar system or planet in post-launch content. Lastly, I want to take a step back from the big story-driven content like what we assume Shattered Space to be and take a look back at what we got in Fallout 4 for DLC. Well, there were 6 in total, starting with Automatron, Wasteland Workshop, Far Harbor, followed by the Contraptions Workshop, then the Vault-Tec Workshop, and finally with Nuka World. What do 3 of these all have in common? That they all have something to do with the workshop building feature. Even when you take a look at the other 3 big story ones, they still had something to do with Fallout 4 settlements. Even when you take a look all the way back to Skyrim, even that had somewhat of a building experience with Hearthfire, so at this point it's safe to say that Starfield will have some as well. We kind of have an idea of what we will be getting with Outpost building, but we might see an update to that with more things to build after the game is released. Personally, I like the idea of being able to build your own space station because it just sounds awesome. They can take what they have done with Outpost building and apply it to creating your own space station. Both of them will be from the same design, but work in a lot of different ways. I imagine that having a space station will revolve more around having spaceships play a central focus, while your outpost will be about farming resources. I actually really like the idea of having a space station as your own, but they can take the idea of outpost building even further by adding more ways to create your settlement on each of the worlds. We know from the Starfield Direct we will be seeing the basics for the building mechanics like hiring your own crew, farming stations, and sleeping quarters. My hope is they will evolve this over time like what they did with Fallout 4. What if we were able to house members of bounty hunter factions and with them came quests set out to become a bounty hunter? Or maybe we can trap creatures of the planet you are on and slowly train them over time to become friendly towards you. There is definitely a lot that we could be seeing when it comes to outpost building in Starfield post-launch if it will not already be in the game. I really hope that Bethesda decides to continue to update the outpost system for the game because from what it looks like already, it could be something that people will sink hours into. Starfield is close now and looking massive from what we can tell. DLC will be playing a big role for the game, but as you can tell, there will be a lot to do from launch as well. Starfield is shaping up to be a game that I can sink hundreds of hours into and I can't wait for it. Even though we still have a little ways to go until we can play for ourselves, it doesn't stop us as fans taking a look at every little detail we can find about Bethesda's next AAA title, Starfield. But that is all for me now though guys. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, comment any videos you want to see in the future, and I'll see you all next time.